Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jamie Parrott, Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at MedResults Network, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our sixth educational webinar presentation of 2019. Today's presentation is the second in our series of risk management and business protection webinars, our first being our presentation 2 weeks ago, which was on asset protection for medical providers. And today we're taking a deeper dive into assets, finances, and how to make the best decisions for your financial future as a medical provider in the medical aesthetic space. It's no secret that 401ks and IRAs can be complex for anyone, but as a physician or a medical provider working in this space, the rules surrounding these types of long-term investments can even have a deeper implication if not handled appropriately. And to help you avoid making some serious financial mistakes in your unique profession, we've invited our colleague, Albert D'Agosto, co-founder of Retirement and Money Strategies, here with us today. Albert, or Al, co-founded RMS to work with clients on the difficult and complex issues surrounding money. And his firm, RMS, offers a detailed written plan for their clients, which forecasts their income and expenses in retirement so that they'll have a clear understanding of the financial challenges in retirement. And he's been a chartered life underwriter since 1996, a chartered financial consultant since 2002, and he received a certified divorce financial analyst designation in 2011. So he has an extensive background and quite a few qualifications that make him a great speaker for this presentation today. During the past 32 years, Al's also worked with clients on matters such as cash flow analysis, asset allocation, tax planning, wealth distribution, and of course risk management involving both life insurance and long-term care analysis. And he is a frequent lecturer on Social Security benefit planning, and he's incorporated this specialty into his practice. So like I said before, with Al's extensive knowledge of each of these topics and his experience working with medical professionals, we decided that he was the perfect expert today to help you make the best financial decisions for your future. So before we begin, I want to let you all know, and I do this every webinar presentation, that while we don't have a live Q&A at the end of this webinar today, we do encourage you to ask questions of Al. We're going to get to those at the close of the webinar, and if you choose to ask them during the webinar, feel free to type those in our chat box, which is in that webinar control panel. I will get to those with Al at the end of the presentation, or if you prefer to ask a question private, as you may know, we do have an automated survey that pops up directly following the event, and you can fill out the questions for that survey and ask any questions you may have of Al at that time. Also, you can certainly email me following the event. I'm happy to pass along information to Al as well. As I mentioned before, that survey does pop up as soon as we close down the event. There's only a couple questions there. It provides us with valuable feedback, and we would love if you take just a minute to fill that out once we finalize the presentation. So without further ado, I'm proud to introduce co-founder of Retirement and Money Strategies, Al D'Agosto.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, everyone, for taking time and making time in your busy schedule to be with us today. We're going to explore and provide a deeper understanding of the mistakes physicians and generally most everyone tends to make when it comes to money and retirement plans, and what you can do to avoid it. And Jamie was kind enough to give you a background. With over the past 3 decades in financial services, I've come to experience a fair amount of common mistakes folks make, and MedResults was kind enough to invite me to share those mistakes with their members and see if there's some strategies that we can have them be aware of to help them avoid them. But before I begin, a word from our regulators. Today's agenda is going to take approximately 30 to 40 minutes to conclude. And whenever I'm in conversation with my healthcare clients, I always ask them what keeps them up at night. And invariably, it's lawsuits and taxes. Now, with respect to taxes, I think the biggest mistake we all make is thinking about taxes only at tax time, which is very, very soon. and there are extensions, but this is tax season. But that's pretty much the worst time to be thinking about tax planning because there's very little that you can do about it. Now, when it comes to planning on protecting lawsuits and those creditors, they're pretty much in practice, there's risk coming at you in many different directions. There's the potential downturn, the business is failing, or there are investments that have gone away in the wrong way and now ultimately resulting in now someone attempting to go after your assets. There's lawsuits that could, and we certainly are aware of, malpractice, and personal lawsuits for injuries that could occur not involving you directly but a family member. So it's important to understand that when we're looking at this, is there something that you could be doing to protect your net worth? There was some research done in 2017 by Diedrich Healthcare, which is a med-mal insurance consulting service, and they wrote that in 2017, approximately $3.9 billion was paid out in claims to those so-called victims of medical malpractice. 3.9 billion. While you're pondering that number, I'm wondering how many of you have given thought to the consideration that your retirement plan is a wonderful means of protecting those assets. And the way that works is as follows. Your 401k that you're contributing to has unlimited protection so long as it's in compliance with the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. You may be more familiar with ERISA. And what that does is your dollars in that plan are fully protected from any creditor or lawsuit. I will make you aware of one caveat to that if you're involved or are in a divorce settlement and that asset is now available to the ex-spouse, that is no longer protected. But so long as the 401k is in its current registration and in compliance with ERISA laws, you are protected. In traditional IRAs, that's where you're making a contribution, and for 2019, that contribution level is $6,000, and for those over 50, an additional $1,000. A Roth IRA has that same threshold for contribution, $6,000 with a $1,000 additional for those over 50. The protection for bankruptcy is for combination of all IRA assets, be they traditional IRA or Roth IRA. $1,362,800 is protected from creditors, and that's the combination. It's not 1.3 for the traditional, 1.3 for the Roth IRA. So in that case, why would you want to consider doing an IRA contribution that isn't tax deductible? Well, first and foremost, that IRA, that non-deductible IRA contribution, does receive asset protection. That's the first thing. The second thing is if you do a spousal IRA, even if the spouse is not working, that dollar amount is protected from asset protection. And consider that if you're making an alternative investment, such as leaving the money in a savings account or a brokerage account, and then a creditor seeks your assets, those are not protected. And finally, and we're going to cover this in a little later portion of the program, we're going to talk about converting that traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, which has some real horsepower, but needs to be understood as it is very, very complex and could get into some serious trouble if not handled properly. So let's look at, first of all, the Roth IRA. First and foremost, it is a non-deductible contribution. Secondly, unlike your traditional IRA, you can make contributions to the Roth after age 70 and a half, so long as it's representative of some earned income. Now, contributions are subject to adjusted gross income rules. So for those whose adjusted gross income is above $203,000, you're not eligible to contribute to a Roth IRA. Withdrawals are tax-free. That's the operative word with the Roth. It's a tax-free income stream if held for more than 5 years and at least age 59 and a half. So beginning at age 54 and a half, that Roth account can grow, and then you can start immediately taking out the distributions of any gain tax-free. You can always take a withdrawal from your Roth account of the principal that you've made to deposit into the account. And unlike a traditional IRA, the Roth IRA gives you the ability to leave that account with no withdrawals for as long as you live. Now, the Roth itself began and was sponsored by William Roth, the senator from Delaware, back in 1997. And there were three basic Roth accounts. There's the contributory Roth account, which I made reference to, with $6,000 maximum contribution with $1,000 catch-up. There's a Roth conversion, and we'll take a look at that. And that's primarily for folks who can't contribute to a traditional or to a Roth IRA account. And depending upon your plan at work, you may have a Roth 401k available to you. Be aware that the Roth 401k is a non-deductible contribution. The maximum contribution to the Roth 401k in the form of an elective deferral is $19,000 for 2019. There's a $6,000 catch-up for those over age 50 for the Roth 401k. So how do you do it? Now, the Roth IRA is an opportunity, and you can convert an individual retirement account to a Roth IRA account. And there are three ways to do so. One, you take the traditional IRA account and you roll it over. In that manner, you take it from the existing Fidelity account, you receive the check in hand, and you have 60 days with which to make the deposit to your Roth account. And there's no limitation on how much you can convert of your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. That's a rollover is one option. And by the way, let me just back this up. On the rollover IRA, current law only allows one rollover per year. You can't do any additional rollovers once an occurrence in the year that you're making the rollover occurs. You cannot do any more rollover withdrawals. But you can do what's referred to as a trustee to trustee. And the trustee to trustee is simply taking the financial institution holding the IRA and transferring that amount from trustee at Fidelity to trustee at Schwab, TD Ameritrade, whatever it may be. You're not physically handling the money, you're simply directing them to do so. And the last one is a conversion. And we're going to spend a little bit more time in the next upcoming slides and see how this all works. But the most important thing to understand is you have multiple ways to incorporate the Roth IRA into your retirement savings strategy. So who should consider a Roth? You don't qualify to make a direct Roth IRA contribution. You make too much money. You're covered by a retirement plan at work. And you're maxed out at your tax-deductible contribution to your retirement plan. So, what I'm asking you to give some consideration to is, if you're of the persuasion that your future tax liability is going to be different than your current tax liability, and more so that it's going to be at a higher tax rate in retirement than you presently are, the Roth conversion needs to at least be recognized and considered for planning. And here's what would happen. As a result of this, there are some rules that apply to this, and it is very complicated. We at Retirement and Money Strategies always recommend, if not require, that any conversion conversation include your accountant or tax preparer who's providing you with this advice. Because what happens is you could end up, if you don't do it properly, you could end up with making that conversion get taxed twice. First, since it was non-deductible, and now when you're moving it, it's getting taxed because it wasn't done properly. So I think the best way to demonstrate how this might work is to give you an example. And the example is as follows. So in this instance, we have Dr. Samuel has an IRA account, individual retirement account, of which contains $100,000 in investment earnings, $60,000 in gains, and $40,000 in a non-tax deductible contribution. They were making that amount, presently $6,000. They were making that every year. So the total count in the IRA is $200,000. So Dr. Samuels has reasons that she can avoid creating income tax liability by rolling over the $40,000 into non-deductible. I mean, she paid taxes on it. She's going to take that and roll it over to a Roth. The IRS has a little bit of a different opinion about that. They have a Roth conversion pro rata rule. And this is the rule that when talking to your accountants, you want to have them analyze with you what the ratio is. And the reason for that is that the tax-exempt portion of your rollover must constitute only a pro rata share of the total rollover. So let's see what that looks like. Since $40,000 is comprised of non-tax deductible contributions, she will be eligible for tax relief only on 20% of the amount she rolled over. 20% is $40,000. The total amount is $200,000. 20% is $40,000. So she only will be eligible for tax relief on 20% of the amount of the rollover, which in this case, only $8,000 will be exempt from income tax. 40,000 times 20, not the full 40,000. So it's absolutely essential that you make that particular amount understandable as to making the conversion. And why are you considering this? You're trading off, once again, current tax liability for future tax-free income. And that's the trade-off that has to be weighed to determine what makes the most sense and whether or not to pursue a conversion. Another area of concern that often brings about attention is underfunding your 401k. And the tax man loves it when you underfund your IRA or 401k, and simply because if you're not doing so, then you're exposing your income in the year of that earnings to the full tax liability associated with it. You're not doing anything to reduce that tax liability. Now, certainly, it's far be it for me to say that everyone should be maximizing their 401k, and with student loan debt, emergency funds. What we recommend at Retirement and Money Strategies is you pick a month. I don't care if it's January, December, whatever the month may be. You pick a month, and every year, you, at that point in time, increase the contribution level by just 1%. That's all. Don't make it a big deal. Just increase it by 1%. Now, why am I emphasizing this, and what does it mean to you? Well, first and foremost, think about this. The more money you're putting into a retirement plan, the larger the pool you'll have available to you, hopefully, with the markets behaving properly. But in any case, you'll have a larger pool of retirement income to depend upon. Another reason is you may be underfunding to the extent that you're missing your employer, if they provide it, employer match. And what happens in that regard is now you have a situation where you're missing money that would be depending over the time period that they require you to be vested, but that's your money, and you're missing that by not matching. Another area where I see some challenges is folks have what we call set it and forget it mentality. When they first started in their employment situation, they said, okay, this is how much I'm going to give, and they've never adjusted that. And the problem with that is your contribution A is not getting the benefit of the impact of inflation and what that would mean to you in terms of your future retirement plan, and more importantly, as a result, you may have a mismatch in what you thought you were saving to ultimately what you end up with. So those two in particular send a message to me that it's most important when you're looking at that to determine how and to what extent you can provide for your future. And that's why we make a point of saying whenever you can to get the maximum contribution into, and if not, increase it at least by 1% each year. Now, this particular area warrants some attention here, and this has to do with if any of you are in the role as plan administrator, and if any of you are in the role as trustee, that it's essential that you read your plan document. And quite simply, I'll give you a statistic. In 2017, the Employee Benefits Security Administration, that's the arm of ERISA, and the Department of Labor has oversight on all of the retirement plans, but the EBSA reported in 2017 they had over 2,000 investigations. And in those investigations, and those investigations are oftentimes, are the result of someone who's a plan participant causing a concern and filing a claim with the DOL. It could be an IRS examination of the plan because there's a mismatch, and they ultimately determine that there's non-compliance. And quite simply, it just may be your turn to get audited. What are the typical problems that occur when you have such a plan like this, and what gets in the way of things? First and foremost, plans need to be amended to comply with current tax law. That's essential that whoever's doing the third-party administration convey to you that they have demonstrated that you are in compliance. Another problem that I see quite often is a new hire, and they could be high level or otherwise, and you want to help them get started right away in their 401k, and they start making a contribution only to find out that you have an eligibility period. And that eligibility period is a problem because they now have contributed before they're able to participate, and that's a problem. And then the last problem is one of, and this unfortunately I've seen far too many times, is not making timely contributions to plan participants' accounts. For whatever the reason, payroll and what have you, there's a real issue there. And the EBSA conducted a little over 2,000 investigations in 2017, and the average fee or plan payment, that's the responsibility of the trustees, is average was $388,000. So it's essential that you make sure that whoever's doing the plan, and I would say to you, if you're the administrator or you're the trustee, is to make sure that whoever's doing the plan administration has signed off on your compliance with that rule. Otherwise, it could be extremely costly. Now, the one final area I just want to touch on, because it's really a function of, and I know it's the self-employed physicians, but anyone who's doing work outside of their full-time employment and they're receiving in the form of a 1099 income, whether it be for lecturing, teaching, moonlighting, whatever the enterprise. And it could be unrelated entirely to healthcare. but whatever it is, you have the ability to shelter, and this is really important. If you have no 401k at work, you have the ability with this self-employment situation to set aside $19,000. That's your deferral portion, and it's a solo 401k. And if you're over 50, you have the catch-up provision, as well as the ability to do profit sharing as the owner employee, and that maximum contribution for 2019 is $56,000, and that doesn't include the catch-up provision. So technically, if all the pieces fell into place, that self-employment income over and above what's going on at your full-time position, that up to 100% of your income can be set aside in a retirement plan and done in such a manner that you can get up to age over 50, $62,000 put away for your retirement. I know it sounds exorbitant, but I think it's important for you to understand that this is available to you, and you may not have given consideration to what that outside income, and maybe it's fully, if you will, tapped at this point, but maybe you need to start thinking going forward from 2019, how you're going to utilize that outside income and put it away for retirement planning. I think it's really important. One point of clarification: if you have a 401k and you're going to open your own business, you can't do $19,000 in each. That's your deferral amount. The only thing you can do for your self-employment is to do a profit sharing portion in your self-employment endeavor. So those are the primary points that we wanted to talk about, and I'll review them and just as a matter of, for what we talked about. I think it's important, as Jamie pointed out earlier, that the previous webinar provided some asset protection conversation. Think about your retirement plan as holding that same ability, and maybe this is an incentive for you to save more. The second point is looking at converting non-deductible IRA contributions to Roth IRAs. It's detailed, it's complex, it's complicated, but it does have application for means by which you can supplement your retirement income on a tax-free basis. Understand those rules and how they apply, and most importantly, try not to, if at all possible, underfund your 401k. That's essential to growing your retirement pool. For those of you in the role of administrator or otherwise, it's your responsibility to make sure that the plan document is in compliance. Get it signed off, have someone convey that and evidence that to you. And certainly don't ignore the special tax treatment. And I say for physicians, and it applies to all self-employed. Look at that avenue as a means by, maybe it's not 100% of what that outside income is going towards, but it should be a portion of it, so that that's building as well in your retirement. That concludes essentially the formal part of the presentation. I just want to mention that you're welcome to, if you'd like to learn more about retirement and money strategies, more in particular how to maximize your retirement dollars, please by all means visit us on our website, www.rmsandu.com. If you want to contact me directly via email, my email is adagosto, A-D-A-G-O-S-T-O, @rmsandu.com. And my phone number is 860-284-9782. Before I turn it back over to Jamie, I just want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes, and it's from Franklin Delano Roosevelt regarding procrastination. And as he wrote, there are many ways to go forward, and there's only one way to stand still. So with that, I'll now turn it back to Jamie.
Al, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all of this information. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope our attendees did as well. I'm sure we'll receive some calls from interested providers who've been on the line today. But for anyone that does have questions, please feel free to reach out to Al, or if you have questions for me or you'd like to go through me, you can reach me at jamie@medresultsnetwork.com. We certainly appreciate your attendance today, and we hope you'll join us on our next educational webinar in May. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.